How much access did you have to him personally in the course of writing this book?
I guess much less than I think people might imagine. I did, I'd say about an hour total in 2 interviews, one on the record and one off the record.
How'd you find him?
And I talked to about 200 people around him. And I did talk to all of his top people. I spent time with the vice president as well. But he generally, if he is going to cooperate with a book, and he does give quite a number of interviews, quite accessible for a president, especially compared to his predecessor. You know, they usually get 15 minutes, half hour at the most. So I did pretty well.
Yeah. How did you find him to be in that environment?
You know, he's very relaxed and thoughtful in these interviews. There were a couple of times when he gave me what I consider to be, you know, very honest answers. One of them in a little bit of code. For instance, I asked him, were you jammed by the Pentagon? And by that I meant, was the Pentagon trying to manipulate you, box you in, you know, force you to decide on 40,000 troops for Afghanistan before you were ready to make that decision?
Yeah.
Were you jammed by the Pentagon? And his answer was, quote, I neither confirm nor deny that I was jammed by the Pentagon. You don't have to be in my business or a rocket scientist to figure out what that means. And I knew then that I would have a very good story about how the Pentagon did try to pressure him, and he pushed back very hard. And so when my book came out, there was a fair amount of news on that, and then the vice president was asked about it a lot because he had put his finger in my chest and said, you know, we're going to be getting out of there, Afghanistan, in July of 2011. Bet on it. And he was very emphatic. And so McCain and others in congressional testimony, when they were asking Petraeus and Gates, and on Sunday television, Biden himself was asked, you know, is this really true? Are we really going to start getting out in July 2011? And it was pretty clear from my reporting that anybody who thinks that Obama is just going to, you know, fold and be a patsy for the Pentagon doesn't know this president.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
Did you know Obama much before this? Did you have a lot of time with him during the campaign? You Chicago guys?
I met him. I'm from Chicago originally, and I met him in 2002. He came to my aunt's wake, or sitting shiva, as we call it.
Yeah.
And
that's a Chicago term.
Right.
Right.
And you know, good friend of my cousin. He comes to this house, and I couldn't believe that this guy was telling me that he was going to run for the U.S. Senate when he had just lost for the House. And I thought, man, that's some moxie. But by that time, we knew a lot of people in common, and I knew that he was formidable. Then, in late 2004. I took my then 13-year-old son with me to Washington to interview Obama, who had been elected but not yet sworn in to the U.S. Senate. And I did the first ever cover story about Barack Obama. There have now been 3,000 in Newsweek. And after the interview, my son Tommy said, you know, Dad, that guy's going to be president in 2008. And I, in a very patronizing way, said, you know, Tommy, when you've covered politics as long as I have, you'll know there's no chance. You know, maybe 2016. He hasn't even gotten to the Senate yet.
Yeah.
So flash forward.
I should have him here, actually.
Yeah, Tommy.
You go away, bring Tommy, right?
Right. So in 2009, in November of 2009, I went in for my interview, and as we're circling the couch in the Oval Office, I came up with what I thought was, really original question, small talk question for the president. I knew that you get about a minute 30 for small talk, right? None of this, by the way, put in the book. And I said, so, Mr. President, how was your Thanksgiving? Great question.
Oh, yeah, right. It was November.
So he was,
ding, yeah.
Says, oh, we had a great time. We went to the George Washington, Oregon State basketball game. His brother-in-law, Michelle's brother, is the coach of Oregon State.
Right.
And, my mother-in-law kept punching me, and I said, first of all, you're hurting me. Second of all, if you don't stop punching me, the Secret Service is going to haul you out of here. So I said, Mr. President, my son goes to George Washington. He's assistant manager of the basketball team. And he goes, your son, that one that I met, all...
He remembered.
Yeah, and he said, that one, he's in college now? So I told him an abbreviated version of the story that I just told you, and he said, "Well, you tell Tommy a couple things. You say hello to him. You tell him." Should have talked me out of it. So that kind of conveys his
sense of it. Well,
and then he says, joke, because he knew he was talking to a reporter.
But you remember Colin Powell was the one who most famously quoted what is attributed to Pottery Barn,